I am going to go ahead and convene the meeting. The folks asked me to do this to make it official. It doesn't appear that we are going to have quorum tonight, so what I've been instructed we should do is to adjourn the meeting and reconvene as a workshop. All right? Do I need a vote to adjourn, or do we just...
That's at least a minute.
Okay, all right. Right? Okay, fair enough. We don't have enough people, and so we don't, no reason to vote, right? So I will now adjourn this meeting, and we will reconvene as a workshop.
Can we go home now?
No. All right, so this meeting is now going to be a workshop. There aren't any decisions that we need to vote on tonight, so it's primarily informational, so that's perfectly okay. And we will start with roll call, I believe. Robin?
Yes. Member Lewis is online.
Ah, okay.
Robin, we're not hearing anything on Zoom.
Okay. Well, I guess I could give you the 3-minute pitch I gave the commission, which is I have experience in both telecommunications and the power industry. I think that adds value here. I possess an engineering degree, an MBA degree, and I was sent for an executive program at the University of Michigan for public policy over a summer. I worked 31 years for Florida Power and Light and 10 years for Pacific Corps in the Pacific Northwest. They provide power to the 6 northwestern states. I started at FPL in distribution engineering, but I didn't last long there, a couple of years in, and I got recruited into a technology group, which included the computers, and I was tasked with the assignment of developing and building out the telecommunications function in the company. The organization was responsible for delivering voice, data, video, radio, internet services to all locations. It also supported core power operations, including system load control, customer call centers, automatic meter reading, and crew dispatch. And we were also an integral part of the restoration, hurricane and restoration process, since we provided radio and had to program all the itinerant workers that came, to work after hurricanes, which included Andrew in 1992. We had an internal staff of engineering and maintenance, and we included all the forms of communications. I had built out 1,000 miles of fiber. We had our own internal radio system, and we had all the LANs, WANs, and everything else that you have on here throughout the entire state of Florida. I guess from a practical standpoint, during a work stoppage, I actually worked at a line crew for a couple of months. On another work stoppage, they put me in a power plant for about 3 months. In the 1980s, I was deeply engaged in what Florida Power and Light's quality program. And I had hands-on experience doing that, and it was quite an experience installing quality techniques into the company's processes. In 1989, Florida Power and Light won the Deming Prize for quality, which is a worldwide prize. At Pacificor, I managed all the computing and telecommunications infrastructure. This included computer centers in Salt Lake City and Portland. These centers housed IBM mainframe computers, the Sun computers that managed the network, the grid, and about 1,000 servers for all the other things that went on for the 6,000 people that worked there. Since retiring, I've kept abreast of the transition to renewable energy. This includes solar, fuels like hydrogen and battery storage. I'm pretty well up to date on most all these things. And more recently, as a part of the OCAMIC, I actually worked with Barry, who was here, and I kind of designed and bid out and did the analysis for a 300 kW system that exists there. So, in a nutshell, that's 3 minutes. That's me.
Thanks a lot. Welcome.
You're welcome.
We want to start down at this end of the table and just quickly tell John who else is here.
Teresa Sperling-Wood, I work with Alachua County Public Schools, Director of their Energy Systems, and I've been doing the UAD for a couple of years now, and used to work for GRU in the Conservation Department. Know a lot of the folks here, familiar with certain things, and energy's always been our passion. And Community Weatherization Coalition, I'm on board there. We've been doing that a long time. It's part of the LEAP program under the ARA grant. So kind of familiar with a lot of the different things we have going on. The day-to-day hands-on working.
Thank you.
Dan Morse, been in the industry for 12 years, training operators in transmission system. My third UAV meeting.
My name is Fletcher Pro. I've been here, how long? Almost 2 years, I guess now, right? And before I retired, I was in the Florida Department of Community Affairs in Tallahassee, which has a major role, or had a major role in power plant siting. The department got erased from the land of the living, so that function really doesn't exist anymore. But in any case, we would always review the 10-year site plans of all the utilities periodically and make recommendations to the PSC.
For the PFC, you said?
Say again?
You said for the PFC, you review the 10-year site plans?
Well, the procedure was that various administrative state agencies would review the documents, and then the PSC would be the central focal point for receiving the comments.
Okay. That wasn't clear. Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
That's all right. This is a workshop now officially, so we
And
can
so
be a
I
little
can
more
just-
informal.
Right.
John, my name is Jason Foltz. We met briefly at the beginning. I don't have a lot of the sort of technical expertise that a lot of our members do. I consider myself, I guess, more of a constituency rep. I have a background in organized labor, and like Teresa, also have been really active in the Community Weatherization Coalition in this community and a couple of different environmental type initiatives. So.
Well, thank you, and thank you for welcoming me. One other thing you probably need to know about me is I'm deaf in one ear, which is the reason I'm way over here. and my hearing aids sometimes help me out, sometimes they don't. So if I ask you to repeat or something, if I can't read your lips real well, you'll know why.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, definitely keep us in the know if we need to make any changes as far as our speaking volume and stuff like that. All right, well, thank you. So I will go ahead and move on to, let's see here, adoption of consent items. That includes our oh, I'm
I
sorry.
apologize. I didn't think about having the minutes on
Oh,
there.
okay.
We'll
Since
need
it's a
to-
workshop, we'll do that at the next meeting. Okay, fair enough. So we'll
We can
skip
defer
over
those.
consent items because we aren't voting on anything tonight. Does that also mean we don't need to adopt the agenda, basically? Like, we don't need to vote to adopt the agenda? We have the
Correct.
agenda, we're gonna move through the agenda as it is. So we will have a portion for citizen comment still, if there's, see any citizens here? But, all right, fair enough. So we'll move on past that, and we will go to new business. So that, the first item here is 211206 GRU proposed fiscal year 23 O&M and capital budget presentation.
So, yeah, Mr. Chair, Claudia Resnick is the CFO of GRU. She is going to lead the presentation, but we're also going to have some of our other officers throughout the utility provide some input and update as well. So we're going to start with our capital budget and then, right? And then we're going to start with our capital budget, and then we'll go to our O&M, or what we call flow of funds, to kind of round out the end of our budget meetings. And just to kind of put everything in perspective, this meeting we'll do capital and O&M. The only other meeting will be a joint meeting with the City Commission that will happen on Monday evening. Where we'll do our fuels budget, and then that really concludes our budget presentations for the year. So with that, Claudia.
Claudia, would you like us to hold questions to the end, or just ask them as they occur to us? What do you prefer?
So I think that the presentation this evening is designed to be interactive because we have the officers here. So I'll be providing high level for the numbers and then turning it over to each one as we move through the different sections. So for the new members, I'm going to reiterate where we're at in the budget process so you kind of understand the timing. The utility, GRU, started the budget process for FY23 back in September. So we had the debt portfolio overview in December, rating agency methodology, cash, liquidity, and reserves in February. We talked about investments in March, revenues, customer forecast in April, and now we're talking about the spending of all of that. So it's O&M and capital. So the capital piece is first because the payment of the capital occurs in the flow of funds. So that's why we put that section next. So we've moved from essentially a day and a half of budget sessions to several months, and that way we can break it up into different sections so we have more time for questions and those sorts of things. So as the general manager mentioned, after tonight there's one more session on the 16th, and then after that we'll be back in September. So with that, Robin, are we ready? Sure.
Actually, before you get started, is that your light on, Fletcher?
I just have, before we get started, I have a question. I read the material that was sent out digitally several days before the meeting, and there were a number of acronyms that I found that I didn't know. So if you see some weird acronyms, if you'd help us kind of identify them, I'd appreciate it.
Absolutely. That is something that we need to work on every year with the acronyms.
And similarly, just for my part, I also looked through it as well. I guess I got the feeling that you're going to be doing this, but there were a number of areas that it seemed like there were really significant increases or decreases from year to year. And so if we could make sure and explain those points in particular, that would be really helpful, I think.
Sure.
Thank you.
Robin, are we ready? Perfect. Every year when I do this particular part of the presentation, I always want to make sure that I articulate that it's extremely important that the capital program at the utility is maintained. There are a number of reasons. One is safety and reliability of the infrastructure, but the safety and reliability of that infrastructure allows for the utility to receive the revenues from our customers in order to pay back, the funds that actually are used to pay that infrastructure for those infrastructure needs. So as we go through this, yes, there's some movements up and down within each system, et cetera, but what those are designed to do is you'll see a cycle. So 1 year you'll see energy supply up, and then energy supply will drop back down, but that's because of what they're doing in their infrastructure needs. It's not always level as you move through time. So at the utility, we don't look at just next year. We're looking at 10, 20, 30 years downstream. And some of those work products that they put together are projects that are happening 5 or 10 years downstream. It's a utility, they're looking at what's happening. So I just want to make sure to point that out. There are reasons why you see those fluctuations in the capital budget. Next slide, Robin. Thank you. So this is the overall capital budget for GRU. You can see the different systems. So it's energy supply, energy delivery, which make up the electric system, water, wastewater, gas, and the telecommunications, the GRUCOM system. Corporate shared services are like IT facilities, those types of things that cross all of the other 5 systems. And here are 2 acronyms. So CIS, the Customer Information System, and AMI, Advanced Metering Infrastructure. The reason why we pulled CIS and AMI out were because those are 2 very large projects impacting the capital spending at the utility. So GRU typically spends somewhere between $75 and $80 million a year unless we have some spikes. So in 21, there was a spike in energy supply. You'll see it in a subsequent slide. They were doing some work out at Deerhaven and at Kelly, so you saw a spike in 21. So in 22, you see some spikes as well. But when you come down to the CIS and AMI projects, when I said 75 to 85 million, so in 22 and 23, it's spiking up to 114 and 116 because of those 2 projects. So we wanted to make sure we pulled those out and noted those, because those are unusual in nature. When we come back for 2024, you're going to see roughly about 24 or 25 million in 2024. So as you look at each system, you can see energy supply is slightly lower than the FY22 budget. Energy delivery is slightly higher, and you'll see some information in some subsequent slides attached to that, and you see the differences in each one. So that is essentially the overview of the utility for the capital budget itself. Do you want me to pause to see if there's any questions?
Yep. I was writing down what you were talking, CIS, Customer Information System, AMI. Now, can you?
Advanced metering and infrastructure.
I didn't know exactly what you called it.
Those 2 projects are running concurrently because they are, it's critical that they talk with each other. And so the decision was made to run them at the same time. So as we're putting in the new billing system, you can read the meters, et cetera. So there's a team of folks that are working on both those projects. And it's in a very positive place right now. You would see, because of they're 2 very large projects that take a lot of resources and a lot of dollars, sometimes they don't run concurrently like that. You would do the billing system or one or the other, but because of the nature of them, they're running at the same time, and it's going very well, actually.
So, I'm sorry.
It's a related question, right?
Yes. So with the billing system, how will that affect the customers with their billing? Is that going to change how the bills come out, or is it going to, the meter's going to automatically read to the bill?
So it's a combination of things. So you have the billing system itself that receives the information and processes the bill for customers to pay into the billing system itself. Then you have the metering process, and the automatic metering process means you don't have people out there reading the meters. There's also data, et cetera, that will come back into the utility so we can look at efficiencies, for example. I believe that the general manager is planning on bringing back a separate discussion on the CIS and the AMI systems, just talked
Okay.
about the benefits of that.
Because sometimes right now, the bills are a little kinky right now.
Yeah, let me just jump in real quick. So in June, we're hoping to bring an update on both of those projects, AMI and CIS, so to the UAB and the City Commission. So we'll have a lot more detail at that time.
Okay. Sorry.
I think you just answered it. These are smart meters.
Yes.
It's part of the CIS. That's
AMI.
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 part of the SAP package.
The CIS is, the AMI is the smart meter implementation.
The AMI is designed to interface with the CIS.
Correct. Yeah, that's as Claudia was mentioning. So the idea is we're doing the projects together so that we have that integration and discussion so that as you bring in on those meters, they're automatically read, put into the billing system more quickly.
Will the historical data be rolled into this, or is historical data going to be lost?
Not all historical data. I might get the years incorrectly, but I think it's 3 years of data in the billing system. I'd have to check on AMI, maybe 2 years for AMI.
Does this include time of day?
So time of day and prepay are another project downstream.
Smart meter, not quite smart.
It's just in phases. So again, I think let's wait until June for all of these questions, because I think we'll have the right people here, the project managers, and be able to go into a lot more detail.
Well, and just specifically on this item, specifically related to the budget, these numbers that we're showing, are these still pretty reflective of the numbers when these were brought before us some months ago? Have there been any significant changes in cost? Okay.
If I had to put myself on the ledge there, they're coming in a little bit less.
Okay.
So, but that's a good thing, because if we have any issues, then as it comes back up, it's not running over budget. The project managers over CIS and AMI are working very closely together, and also with the finance group about any budgetary issues or concerns as well. Yeah. So, any other questions or? Okay. Thank you, Robin. So this is the energy supply line of business of the electric system. So the electric system is made up of energy supply and energy delivery. So these are the major categories that you see in the utilities budget and inside the utilities budget book. And you'll see the budget book closer to September when we finish that up. So you'll see this plus a lot more information. And then we broke it up into the major pieces. So Kelly Plant Operations, Deer Haven, DHR, the biomass plant, the South Energy Center, and Innovation Energy, and Corporate Shared Services. Corporate Shared Services are IT, facilities, et cetera, that's spread across. The other areas there are the pieces that the Energy Supply Officer is specifically responsible for. So I'm going to go through the next couple of slides and then bring Dino up to if you have any questions for him. Next slide, please. So these are major categories in the Kelly plant. I referenced earlier that the FY21 budget for energy supply had spiked up. It spiked up because of some significant work at Kelly. It's essentially, I would say, practically a brand new plant inside, right, Dino? All right. Next slide, please. All right. So Deer Haven operations, an overview of the major sections there. Next slide, please. And DHR, overview of the major sections there as well. I apologize. Deer Haven Renewable. It's the biomass plant. And if I miss an acronym, please catch me on it. The South Energy Center. And with that, Dino DeLeo is the Energy Supply Officer for GRU. So if you have any questions on any of the specific projects, he's available for that.
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to do tonight is going to make it a little bit clunky as we go through, but wanted to have each of the officers from each of the operational areas get up to make sure for new members to be introduced, and there's some folks that are in different roles than previously. So I think a lot of you know Dino DeLeo. He is the Officer of Energy Supply, and so he's just going to give a kind of a few brief comments and overview, and then if you guys have any questions about what Claudia just presented, he's available now to do that.
All right, thank you for that intro, Chair, board members. So I'm here to present the 23 budget and major attributes of that. A part of the question earlier asked about why the budget cycle. Our outages for our major plants are on 18-month outage cycles. So you're never going to see a level capital budget because most of our capital expenditures happen during those outages. So that's why you'll see a $34 million expenditure in 21, because we replaced the turbine and generator in Unit 8 at Kelly Plant, and we did the retrofit of Deer Haven 2 to dual fuel natural gas and coal. So when you look at the 23 budget, we're down about $11 million. It's our balance of plant. It's our life cycle management. There's three major attributes that drive that. We have gas turbines. We have 8 generating units. 4 of those are combustion turbines. CTs are basically jet engines, for lack of a better term. They're there for peaking. They do hard start. They have high pressures, high temperatures. They see a lot more wear and tear than our steam turbines that are 4 to 12 hours to start up, and we can control those in a more deliberate manner than you can a gas turbine, which is designed to be on service in 15 minutes on load. So as a result, there are parts that wear on those particular units that have to be replaced. And we look at them every 18 months to 3 years, and we predict where we think parts need to be replaced. And we add to our budget to replace all those parts so they're available when the turbines are out of service. Now, we have an advantage here at Deerhaven CT3, put in service in 95, and at Kelly CT4, put in service in 2001, are essentially identical. So we're able to capitalize on buying parts for both through our system. And the same is true at Deerhaven for CT1 and CT2. Although they were put in service in 1976, they are identical, so we can capitalize on those parts. But that's part of life cycle management. There's about $2 million in the 23 budget for that. And you have to have those parts on service so that if you get into it and what you predicted wasn't accurate, you're able to have those parts available to get those peakers back in service. The other major driver is we put that new turbine and generator in 21. At the time, we did not buy the capital spares. There are certain parts that you need to maintain on board. This is an overseas unit. They have long lead times. Some of the availability of items is not available, so you need to maintain a kind of a staple of capital spares. We coordinated with our OEM, which is Siemens in this case, and we got about $2 million of capital spares that we're going to buy. And the third driver for that $11 billion in the capital budget is Deerhaven 1. Deerhaven 1, as most of you know, was put in service in 1972. It's designed to retire this December. December of 22 is Deerhaven 1 was going away. We're doing a lifetime assessment. It's a formal process where we evaluate the major safety items and reliability items of the unit, personnel safety, equipment safety, like the steam chest and the rotor bores. And we have about 1.8 million in this fall for that Deerhaven 1 outage with the aspiration of extending the life. We'd like to get 5 years, but the empirical data will let us know how long we can extend the life of that unit. And those are the major drivers, and I stand by for there's any other questions on our capital budget. Yes, sir.
Off the top of your head, can you tell me what the fuel mix you have? I know you have a whole bunch of different plants. Overall?
Oh, the fuel mix?
Yeah.
Great question, Chair and board members. So for us, we have a unique advantage. We have a lot of diversity in our fuel. So our biomass plant is our actually most cost-effective unit. As we sit here today, biomass is about $35 a megawatt. That's cheaper by far, about $95 a megawatt on Deerhaven 2. That's natural gas prices driving that. But biomass is $2.99 for the fuel, for the what we call an MMBTU, a therm. So we have biomass, which is typically between 20 and 30% in our system. We have natural gas, which is about 60% to 70%. And then we have a combination of coal and liquid. There are times when we have gas alert days where we have no gas availability. We'll have to burn liquid fuel or solid fuel 10, 15 days a year. It happens all the time. Remember the northern issue in Dallas that happened a couple of years ago? For 4 days, we were on all solid liquid fuel because of the diversity of our fuel mix. And we actually made money during that time when a lot of people lost money during that particular time. So that's pretty much the mix, most being natural gas and biomass with some liquid fuel. And we have limited coal, but we do have to maintain that capability. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
What is the coal a megawatt? You said biomass was 35.
So as you look at prices today, what we call a therm. So if you look at the gas pump and you look at what cost, because what you do is combine the cost of the commodity and the efficiency of the unit, right? So it's just like your car, what you pay for the gas and what the miles per gallon you get out determines how far you're going to go. So for us, coal is at 430. But the reason coal's at 430 is it's on the ground. It's a physical hedge. You actually own it. I mean, you have it on the ground. It's not something you're buying. Today we bought gas in the market at 628. We've been as high as 688 recently on natural gas. And then biomass was 299. So that's kind of like the cost of the commodity, 299 for biomass. And again, you got to combine it to the efficiency of the unit to determine the cost per megawatt. So I gave you prospect megawatts for DHR were 35 today and 95 for Deerhaven 2.
Okay.
Big
That's
difference.
where I got a little confused with how the numbers went.
Yes, I apologize. Great question.
Fletcher, I think you had a.
I just want to say that I appreciate you giving those statistics. We've asked for those for a long time. I just want to remind the general manager that we've been promised to have those statistics in the monthly report each month. So we're looking forward to having those in black and white each month. But I have another question. When Claudia made her presentation, we have a number of columns that show large decreases in cost. Can you walk us through where these decreases are coming. In last month's meeting, we were told about very steep increases, for example, in the cost of natural gas, for example, that sort of thing. Can you help us out with that?
Oh, yeah.
Could you tell us which page you're referring to?
Well, there are a number of them, of course.
Page 3? That the one you're talking about?
You know, so, again, a great question, Chair, board members. As I explained, our units, other than the DHR, which is the biomass plant, it's on a 1-year outage cycle. So every year it goes down for a period of time, 30 days or so, for purposes of inspection and maintaining our equipment, life cycle management. The other plants are on 18-month cycles. So you can see when you have 18-month cycles and you're moving units around, you're going to have years where you have 2 outages in that same year, i.e. 21. 2021, we spent $34 million. $24 million was for the new turbine and generator at Kelly. $12 million was the retrofit of Deerhaven 2, which was the fuel and natural gas. So when you see like 23, it's life cycle management. It is really the balance of plant. So we take all the inspection reports we've had before, we determine what we need to do in those shortened outages, and we do those in 23. So you're not seeing those large cycles because you don't have long duration outages. When we get to 25, you're going to see another 2 big outages there. So our costs are driven by our outage cycles. And that's why, as the CFO mentioned earlier, you'll see a lot of peaking and valleying. But we try to levelize as much as we can with buying the balance of plant stuff that I talked about, like combustion turbine parts and spare parts. I hope that helps in answering. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any questions for now?
Where would you like to go?
So
Where
we are.
would you be driving to?
So we're on a process right now of doing our second IRP. So in June, I believe we'll be presenting the previous IRP. It'll be up to Tony for the 2018, which we presented to this board before. We'll present it again with kind of a roadmap forward. We're working on the IRP. The IRP is the Integrated Resource Plan. It is the roadmap, basically, to go forward. And the IRPs are iterative processes because you have to have technology as your friend. Today, when you look at battery backup for solar, it is never anywhere close to where the solar panels are. So the next step is the IRP, but the grand vision is meeting towards our resolution of 2045, which is a net zero concept. And it's going to be an iterative process to get there. And our next, obviously, we have 50 megawatts of solar coming on in 2024. That's already under a current ITN. And then the IRP will give us other options to bring to the board and city commission that work towards that resolution.
Considering hydrogen?
Yeah, we will allow great question, by the way, board member chair. I think any technology that we don't want to be serial number 1, okay? Don't want to be that. We want to be in a little proven technology, but we won't be hesitant to any technology. Hydrogen is one of those ones that's coming down the road. Carbon capture could be one of those, but we will allow the technology. Because if you lock into the technology today, the cost we'll pay for it will be tremendous. If you allow technology to take over, we could see reduced expenses to our customers and still achieve the same goals.
Thank you.
Hope that helps.
Next slide, Robin. Thank you. So the next area is energy delivery. So as I mentioned earlier, energy supply and energy delivery make up the total electric system. You can see the FY21 for the energy delivery portion of the electric system was 18 million, moved to 21, and then to 26 million. You'll see a spike up in the substations, which the officer, Tony Carroll, can talk to in just a few minutes. So I'm just going to go through the next slides really quickly and turn it over to Mr. Carroll. Next slide, please. So T&D operations. Next slide. T&D construction. Electric engineering. Substations. Relay operations. And substation and relays. So with that, Tony Carroll, who is the interim thank you. Acting. Energy delivery officer is available. Should you have any questions about that particular area? Thank you.
Good evening. I'll just start by letting everyone know that about 2 years ago, we had a substation transformer that failed. And we discovered at the time that the transformer was an older transformer. It was over 50 years old. And so we immediately started into action, ordering a new transformer to replace that one, but also to start a process to plan and replace all of our transformers that are in the 40 to 50 year range. And so that's the biggest increase that you see in the energy delivery budget is due to 2 transformers that we're planning to replace in 2023. And we replaced one in 21, and we're in the process of replacing 2 right now at our Sugarfoot substation. And so each one of those transformers run around $1 million each. They're 44 MVA Waukesha transformers. So the other increases that you'll see that we've done are basically aging asset improvement and new business, increase in new business. We've been replacing 3-phase transformers, single-phase transformers that are aging, either that or they're rusted out. And we've got cable that was direct buried cable when it was installed, 30 years ago. It is starting to fail, so we've been actively replacing that cable and putting it in conduit. And in addition to that, we've also been trying to, in an effort to increase our reliability, we've been installing reclosing devices in our normal open points and also at the midpoint on our major feeders to help isolate smaller sections of circuits whenever we have a fault caused by a tree or wildlife. That way it reduces the number of customers that experience an outage. And not only that, with SCADA implemented, our operators have the ability to isolate an outage automatically in many cases and automatically close the normal open device and refeed those customers from a different circuit. And what we plan for the future, in future years, as we install these reclosing devices, we're strategically planning on having self-healing networks where it will automatically isolate the fault and automatically close and pick up as many customers as possible, as long as it's not closing in on where the location of the fault is. Yes.
Is the Fort Clark switchgear, is that part of where it goes over to Alachua, city of Alachua, or is that a different switchgear?
I think that's a different switchgear.
Because I know usually when we lose power out that way, it goes all the way from Alachua back. There's a station out there.
Fort Clark is going to be the last station that we have, and that particular station is radially fed, if I remember correctly. So it's on a radial feed. So if it doesn't have redundant transmission service.
Will that change in the future?
Yes, in the distant future.
Okay,
But I think you were talking about the transmission switch. It's a 3-way switch, and we've been performing maintenance on that, and we do plan on replacing that switch in the future.
Is that the one that takes out the schools and everything on that side?
I think that's correct. Yes.
But that's in the works.
Yes, and it will be automated, so it can be controlled remotely.
That's good.
I have kind of a general question. So I've been taught as a homeowner that I need to be saving for the next roof I'm going to have to put on my house some distant years in the future. I need to be saving for that now. And I imagine that it works somewhat differently in the utility industry, but it seems strange to me that you would have a situation where the utility would kind of almost be caught by surprise by equipment that is 50 years old and has to be replaced, and now there's a sudden spike of expenditure that has to go into replacing that, rather than saying, okay, we're installing this, we know it's going to have to be replaced at some point, and sort of budgeting and planning for that, unless maybe I misunderstood the way that has been described, but I just wanted to ask about that.
No, sir. The best way I can describe that is there's been a difference in philosophy and a change in management in the last 3 to 4 years in that area. And so the old philosophy was we're going to maintain, and baby the equipment. And as long as we maintain it and keep it maintained, it's going to last, 100 years. But that's just not the case. I mean, I could maintain my car, which is in the parking lot, and it's got over 300,000 miles on it. While I rely on it to drive to work every day, I wouldn't get in it and drive to California. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that was the main reason. I don't think they thought about replacing it in the near future. They just thought that they could maintain it and it would be okay. But when you talk about substation transformers, there's what we call a bathtub curve. And the reason they call it a bathtub curve is because you have it's shaped like the end of a bathtub, and this would be your time axis on the x-axis, and your probability to fail would be on the y-axis. So when the transformer is new, its first year or two, it has a very high likelihood to fail, and then as it gets older, it lasts for about 30 years, having issues, but then as it gets between 30 and 50 years old, the probability of failure increases again.
Fair enough. John, did I see a hand over here?
Actually, it's you brought up something that kind of goes to a different part of this, and your CFO might have I noticed you have a UPI fund, which looks like a reserve. And my question is that just an accounting, what do you call it, amortization of when you put it in there from all the plant and service you have? Or is that your engineers saying this is where you are in the bathtub curve and you need to plan on this kind of an expenditure? It's a big difference.
I would definitely have to rely on our CFO to answer that question.
And actually, timely enough, so I had a call from a citizen before tonight's meeting that I had specifically asked for a little bit more explanation of the UPIF. So I'll feed on to that question if that's okay.
So I'm going to give you a longer answer to get to that answer. The utility, so GRU has a bond resolution that defines certain funds. As a matter of fact, let me show you a visualization of it. This is actually in the next presentation.
Okay.
Do we have overhead? Okay.
So, yeah.
And we could also wait until the next
That's fine
presentation if
too.
you
That's
like.
fine too. Yeah, as
Okay.
long as we talk about that tonight, I think that's fine.
Oh, we did switch it, okay. So the resolution for the utility defines certain funding, so the way that, it's called a flow of funds, and it defines that the revenues that are coming into the utility are supposed to go to certain boxes, right? The bond resolution is set up in such a way to ensure that the bondholders are paid at the end of the day. That's what it's designed to do. And we have different funds funds going into buckets in order to make that happen. In order to pay back the bondholders, so if you think about it, we're issuing debt, and then we have this concept called UPIF, which I'll explain in a few more minutes. Those two come together to actually pay for the capital infrastructure of the utility, because it's important to maintain that infrastructure. When we started the presentation, that's what I was describing. It's important to maintain that infrastructure. For the utility to issue 100% debt is not a good thing for the utility, so we end up splitting it between something called construction funds, which are bonds, and utility plant improvement fund, which is the UPIF component of it. And the reason why I'm referencing the bond resolution is because the bond resolution prescribes how we do certain things. We do them in certain order, and it's very important that we do it in that order so that at the end of the day, we pay back the investors that are loaning, the city, the utility, funds. So the revenue piece of this, so when you see the revenue line, those are revenues coming in from the sale of services. So it's when we bill a customer for, electric service, water service, et cetera. Those are the revenues that are coming in order to pay XYZ. The next piece are the O&M costs, and the O&M costs are also to maintain the infrastructure at the utility, and they're number 2 in the flow of funds. We pay out for the O&M. That comes to a concept called net revenues, and then we pay the debt service. The debt service is the piece that actually goes to the bondholders, the investors. The investors are folks like insurance companies, life insurance companies, BlackRock, Vanguard. They invest in the utility because they're looking at a long-term horizon as far as a return of capital on their investment. Debt defeasance is a new concept for the utility. We've talked about that in a few of our meetings. Debt defeasance, where we're setting aside monies to pay down debt or reduce the amount of debt that we're going to be issuing. That's not part of the bond resolution. That's part of the process that we've put in place over the past couple of years. And then we have UPIF. UPIF is a portion of the revenues from here that's set aside to pay for capital infrastructure. So we typically look at 50% bond proceeds and 50% current year operating revenues to pay for capital infrastructure.
And UPF stands for what?
Utility Plant Improvement Fund. Okay. And then after all of those payments, we have where you can use the leftover funds for any other lawful purpose. That's why the general fund transfer is last. That is the very last payment that the utility makes. We've had this discussion over the past couple of years where the flow of funds essentially wasn't enough to cover the GFT. And so that's why we've had a couple of things in the past year, the multi-year base rate increases and the reduction in the GFT, because at the end of the day, it has to be for that lawful purpose, but there wasn't enough being earned. So UPIF pays for capital infrastructure at the utility. We could also use it for O&M. We could use it for debt service. So that's a really long answer to get back to what it really is. It's current year operating revenues that are used to maintain the infrastructure at the utility. But I had to give you the overview to get to the short version.
Can you get a dislocation though? Because this appears to be, you're setting aside money, what do you call it, so that you can pay the bondholders, and keep straight. But from an engineering standpoint, if you're on the edge of the bathtub curve, do you have enough money to actually do the job?
So from the financial perspective, we ensure that if the systems need funds, we achieve those funds. We issue bonds and receive cash. And the historical spend at the utility has been roughly between $75 and $85 million. I will tell, historically in the past, we've had some over budgeting that has occurred, so we pay attention to that as far as the historical spend. What Mr. Carroll was describing was, I think, a belief system within the energy delivery system. That's not from the finance perspective. So I would encourage everybody to come to us and say, look, we need these monies, because at the end of the day, we have to maintain that infrastructure, and that's important to everybody. It's extremely important to maintain that infrastructure. So I think that they've recognized that they need to go ahead and replace those things, and they're moving forward with that. So you'd said something earlier. I want to make sure I'm being kind of clear with this. The UPF dollars are coming from current year operating revenues that are helping to pay for the capital infrastructure program. So throw out just a number. We might issue $50 million in debt, but we use $50 million in UPIF. We're typically trying to run at a 50-50 rate so that we're not issuing too much debt. Sometimes there's a question is, why don't you just pay for capital out of current year revenues? Well, then all of a sudden we have $100 million that needs to come from current year customers, and that's not fair to those customers because you have 2 or 3 generations downstream that are using those assets that we're building today. We're always on a long time horizon, always 10, 20 years out.
Mr. Chair, I do want to add to that too. The capital, every year we go through a capital improvement plan update, which does precisely that. It looks at what are all the needs over the next 6 years. Okay. And then next year, what are the needs over the next 6 years? So we're always kind of iterating to the needs that are occurring. And as Dino shared, like with the outages at a power plant, in an outage, then it's out and you're going in there and you're looking at what all the issues are. In other systems, you're doing other sorts of assessments on a regular basis so that you're figuring out what those plans
You
are.
pretty well understand what this next 6 years looks like.
Correct. And then we're going to update it the next year if we learn something new or different.
So from the financial perspective, we're modeling 10 years out. Good, because we're running projections as far as what the areas will need to make sure that we have, enough funds that are coming in, because that's the goal, is to make sure you have just-in-time funds, or at least you're borrowing funds at lower interest rates. So we're trying to be very careful with that. Are there any other questions for
Are there
Mr.
some
Carroll?
landmines that the UAB probably ought to be aware of that might be exploding here in coming years? Anything you're predicting that might be a real sore thumb?
In the infrastructure or in the
Well,
finances?
Eventualities, that they're gonna need a lot of money, like the two transformers that went.
So let me come back for a second. Can you go back to, I think, slide 2 or 3 that has the totals on there? Robin, thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, that's it. So the $4 million in energy delivery, to put it in context, is part of a $92 million budget. So it, like I said at the beginning, it shifts up and down depending on the line of business and what those needs are with that particular line of business. Dino described earlier, energy supply was heavy last year. Energy delivery is going to be heavy next year. Wastewater is going to be pretty heavy in the coming years. But the total average spend for the utility is around 75 or 80. It just fluctuates as far as what's happening in those systems. I'm going to tell you that the operational areas are extremely good at making sure that they know what's coming downstream and planning for that appropriately. And they take a lot of pride in the infrastructure at the utility. So I'm comfortable from a CFO perspective when seeing those numbers come up and down. I'm looking up at the total as far as the macro level is concerned. And we do have, some increases that do make sense, but you also have some decreases that make sense as well. One thing I do want to point out is that 75 to 85 million is not quite being paced with depreciation. So our capital spend probably should be just a slightly higher, because as you're depreciating your assets, you want to make sure you're replacing them as such. And those are things that we've talked about internally, but that's a big movement up and down. Then you have a little bit of upheaval as far as the net zero goal, and so there's a lot of conversations that happen around the capital piece of it.
Good to move forward?
Okay, so the water system. Thank you, Robin. So, General Manager, are you okay if I just run through water and wastewater since it's the same officer?
I think we're going to we'll
Okay.
stop each one.
Okay, so in the water system, in FY21, the total actuals were 13.8 million. The 22 budget, 13.1. The 23 budget is 16.1. Next slide, please. The next slide is the water distribution piece, and then water engineering. So with that, I will introduce Debbie Daughtry for the water system, I believe. Yes, thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, I guess. So my name is Debbie Doherty. I'm the Water Wastewater Engineering Director. And so the way they show our numbers looks like the engineering department, my department, is spending a lot of money. That money is across distribution and Murphy. We own the project is why it shows up that way. So just to talk about our budget as a whole, the water system capital budget contributes to our mission to provide safe and reliable drinking water 24/7, 365 days a year. The major projects at Murphy this year are really tied to our service pumps, which pump into our distribution system, and then also in our well field. We have a couple of well field pumps we're replacing and some of the equipment, electrical equipment that goes with those pumps. In the distribution system, we're replacing a lot of water services right now, polybutylene and galvanized water services. That's primarily where our leaks happen in our system. And so we're spending a lot of money in the distribution system trying to replace those services ahead of the leaks and trying to be proactive. So all of the projects you see here are kind of tied to delivering that water to our customers every single day. So if y'all have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
You said you're replacing the well pumps. How many well pumps are there?
There are 15 wells. This is, I mean, honestly, we do one about every year or two, is kind of how we roll through each one.
And how many are you replacing in these projects?
There's only, there's one in each year. It kind of spreads out.
And then at Murphy, you have a lot of maintenance to redo the tanks, right?
Yeah, there's, we paint them and do coating on the tanks and things like that.
What about the solution inside the tank? So you have to refresh that?
Not really. I mean, there's chemicals applied to do the treatment. That's an O&M expense, not a capital expense. So we just have to keep the pumps and all of the steel covered. And the coating is really important for the steel. But
How big are the pumps? I'm just curious because they're huge.
yeah, they are. I have a picture of them actually. Our high service pumps are 700 horsepower pumps. There's a picture on that slide of the high service pump
Understand
building.
how big those pumps really are. 700 horsepower.
Yeah. That's the high service pump room with them all lined up. The one at the end has a diesel on it to run that pump. The rest of them are just direct driven motors.
So these are inside Murphy, but what about the well field pumps out on the actual?
They're
on top
all
of the
different,
wellhead?
depends on how deep each well is. So they range anywhere from 150 up to 250 horsepower pumps. They're spread all around. You see them along 53rd when you drive by, and then they go up north into the conservation area.
Anybody else? Any questions for this part? Thank you. She don't want to look at us.
Back to the presentation.
So while we're waiting, we can just use the overhead.
Can we go back to the presentation?
Ah, perfect. Oh.
I'm sorry.
So while they're doing that, I can go ahead and start. So this is the wastewater system. So in FY21, total actuals were 23.5 million. To FY22 budget is 28.4 million, and then 30.3 in FY23.
You ready to move?
Yes, thank you. Lift stations, then water and wastewater collections, and then engineering. And then I'll introduce the officer of our
Yes.
wastewater.
Familiar face.
Okay. So this is Debbie Daughtry.
Hello again.
It's important for us to keep water and wastewater separate. If
Yes.
you know what I mean.
Really?
So-
They tried to make me talk the same. So for our wastewater capital budget, our mission here is to receive and treat all the wastewater from our customers and return it back to the environment in a environmentally friendly way and responsible manner. Our major project that we have going right now is at Main Street Water Reclamation Facility, which is the facility on Southeast 16th Avenue. We have a very large project to redo, and we're touching almost every part of that treatment facility. And it'll take us about 5 years to do the project. So that's why you see that swing in money on our budget. It is a large project. That project will also increase the capacity of that plant from 7.5 million gallons a day to 10 million gallons a day, as well as just replacing a lot of aging infrastructure and facilities there. We also spend a lot of money on our wastewater collection system, lining our pipes, keeping our manholes in good shape, and trying to improve the system. And then the other project, which y'all have heard us talk about, is the groundwater recharge wetland. That project is moving forward right now, so that is another reason for the larger dollars in the next few years as we build that recharge wetland in the next 3 years. You have questions, Tracy?
I do have a question. The lift stations, are they all on a backup generator now?
No, they are not.
Is there any plans for that ever?
So we do have a lot of lift stations that do have backup generators. It's only the ones that pumps. If there's a DEP rule about which ones you have to have them on, we have them on all of those. We also have other stations that we do have them on. And then we have our own portable generators that we use to drive around and move during storms.
So all the lift stations actually have a connection now where they can just drive up and plug the generator in
Right.
rather than other
Right.
methods?
So during
Okay.
storms, we spend a lot of time driving around keeping the wastewater flowing
Right.
so that it doesn't come out of our system.
But I don't think a lot of people realize how involved that is
Yes.
during a storm and during the events. Everybody talks about the electric, but when the electric has problems, getting that part taken care of can be
Yes.
crucial.
Yes. Yes, I think we had 90 stations go out in Irma, so yeah, it
Right.
can be
we
very
did-
challenging.
We had a lot, and
Yes.
people will hear them in the neighborhood when they're beeping.
Yes.
A while back, we had a presentation on the Kanapaha project. Of course, you have money for Kanapaha in there. Is that budget reflective of the Kanapaha project that we were told about?
If it's the recharge wetland you're referring to, yes. It's the recharge wetland, though, will be in the reclaimed water fund because that wetland is treating the reclaimed water. The Kanapaha project's listed here at our Kanapaha Water Reclamation Facility over on 63rd Boulevard in the west part of town. And that's just pump replacements and equipment replacements at the plant.
So that project is properly funded and moving right ahead?
Yeah, it is moving right ahead. We actually are negotiating our contract right now with our design builder. And that project has actually gotten grant money, so we're 50% funded on that for design and construction, so which is great. Should be $8 to $10 million project.
I'd like to see it.
Give us a few years. Thank you.
So this is the gas system. So FY21 actuals, just under
Oh, did I move too fast?
Just under 3.6 million. FY22, 5.3. The FY23 budget is coming in at 4.5. Next slide, Robin. Thank you. T&D construction and gas engineering. I think that's it. And meter measurement operations. All right, so Tony Carroll is the officer over energy delivery for the gas system. So energy delivery is for the electric system and the gas system, just to make that clear. So thank you.
Hello again. On our gas department, we've been actively replacing our inferior materials for about 20 years now. And I'm happy to say that we have successfully replaced all of our cast iron pipes. We no longer have any cast iron pipe. And we're in the process of replacing our black plastic pipe. And the reason it is inferior is because it has a tendency to crack more so than the medium density polyethylene. And it also has mechanical joints because whenever it was installed, fusion was not all that common. And so this black plastic pipe will be installed and have fused joints, and so it should be much more reliable and safer.
So sometimes when the black plastic cracks, you'll just have a pocket of gas come out in weird spots, right?
I would say that would happen when a crack does occur, and that's why we have technicians on call to respond whenever people report they smell gas.
Right, but a lot of people don't understand that it could crack anywhere along
That's
that
correct.
plastic line. It could be in the middle of a groundway. It's not somewhere where you would expect.
Right, correct. Yes, sir.
I assume you provision the gas for your electric turbines, your generators?
Yes, we do, but I would have to rely on our energy supply officer to fully answer that question. He's more familiar with where they purchase their gas than I.
Yeah, Chair, Board Member, Energy Supply, the Fuels Department procures all the natural gas associated with what we call LDC, which is the limited gas control. That's the residential gas and the gas used in the power plants. We do all the procurement.
And anywhere else where we have generators, I mean, GRU has a lot of generators around. They're typically fueled by natural gas, right? Most of the generators, you guys have put in some of the generators around, and then at the schools we have them too.
Well, I'd say that some of them are fired by natural gas, but we also have obviously the biomass generator.
I'm talking about the building generators,
Oh, okay.
where you guys have the generator program with GRU.
So at the power plants, all the generators be electric, but if you're talking about like generators for lift stations and all of those, gasoline operated, diesel operated, propane operated, they're various, whatever the same one you would buy out we buy out various fuels, whatever we can find that meets our needs. If you're talking about those portable generators, if you're talking about the plants, they're all natural gas.
Okay, like at, on Fourth Avenue over there, you have a big generator in case the power goes out for under the GroupCom stuff under there, the servers and everything. That's natural, it's diesel or natural gas? It's diesel.
I think most of our generators that are distributed are diesel. I
Okay.
don't think we have any natural gas generators.
Because I know in the schools, we've piped in natural gas for the generators, rather than having propane.
Like the ones at our lift stations are diesel, at our plants are diesel. So yeah, I'm not aware of any natural gas fed.
We have some that use propane, but
Yeah.
diesel and propane is our primary equivalent.
On that note, just a note for everybody, when we talk about natural gas, after Hurricane Andrew, we could not get diesel deliveries for months. And all the generators that we had in the school system down there worked on natural gas that was piped in. Other than that, we didn't have power sources for quite a bit of time.
And you couldn't find the gas, because I was there.
Right, you couldn't find I was there too. You couldn't find gas, you couldn't find diesel, you couldn't get anything. The only reliable source of power after that major storm was the natural gas piped into the generators.
Yeah, and just to kind of touch on, so we do have quite a bit of storage for diesel, as well as contracts for even in emergencies that we have a certain amount of set aside from our fuel suppliers to have that diesel available for our generators for many days to come. So a lot of our storage on site is 3 to 5 days, and then we have contracts for even a longer period of time if we happen to be without power for that period of time. Any more questions on the energy delivery? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so this is our last operational system. Then we'll talk about CIS and AMI. So this is GroupCom. So the capital budget the capital actuals for FY21, 225,000, spiked up to 2 million in FY22, and then down to 775 in 2023. And then we see operations, and then the next one are network operations. And Lewis Walton is the telecommunications business officer. So if you have any questions on GroupCom, he's here for you as well. Thank you.
Good evening. I always find it helpful to kind of give a quick overview of GroupCom. It's not something that a lot of people are familiar with. First, we're a competitive business. We compete with others to get the business that we offer. We have 3 main lines that we offer. It's telecommunication services, it's tower leasing services, and public safety radio for the area. And in those areas, you can imagine we've got 2 primary goals there, right? It's about reliability and performance for all of those. And that's primarily what you see here. We have upgrades to servers and technology as things change, and you bring technology in, they reach the end of their life or the end of support, and then you put a plan in to replace them. And that's primarily what is driving these expenses here, both from buying new routers to replace older model routers so that you continue to maintain performance for your customers. And then we also have routers that we use to manage traffic and to manage the systems and to manage outages or issues that come up in the system from time to time. And that's primarily what we're addressing in this year's budget. Captain, yes, sir.
How do you fit with the with the electric company in terms of the trunk radio systems? Do you own it and manage it, or do they have their own? Or?
No, we do. We own it and manage it, and they are a subscriber to it. So all of the public safety agencies and Public Works, a few others, are subscribers to the system. So we do that as an arm's length transaction, and it's generally governed by an interlocal agreement. And currently, we're under terms and conditions.
And so you own the towers, what do you call it, and the equipment.
The city owns the towers in various aspects. And we lease the space on it. So we lease we provide transport for a number of those towers or for all of those towers, carrier grade Ethernet MPLS transport service. And then we monetize if the space on those and the ground space for them.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other questions?
Yeah, this was definitely one of those ones where there were such significant swings from year to year. I just wonder if you
Sure.
could just talk for a moment about, kind of talk us through what some of those swings are about.
Sure. Primarily, what you see from last year, you saw over $1 million there. That was, we have a central office, and it's not the office where we all go to. It's actually our central brain that's here downtown. It's where we connect to the rest of the world. It houses all of our electronics, and we also manage co-location services out of that facility. So, for instance, the 8th Judicial Circuit Court down in the Fort Myers area has a server up here as a backup server that we make sure stays operating and has the right air conditioning, the power supply, backup power supply, all those things. And so what we did there last year was we needed to invest, or that we're doing this year, is we needed to invest in a new air conditioning system for it because it has grown over time. We also needed to employ that. We needed to do some electrical system upgrades there too, and some battery backup system upgrades. So that's primarily what we're doing right now. And just with anybody else, it's providing it's challenging with the lead times on equipment, right? So we're hoping to get all that done this year, and if we bleed till next year, we'll manage that. But that's primarily what you'll see. You'll see cycles of electronics needing to be replaced. They're generally not on the same timeline, so it kind of evens itself out. And then you see those type of capital upgrades where we're actually having to do a heavy lift, like that whole entire power and AC system there at the CO.
At
Yes,
our
sir.
last meeting, we were promised a thorough debriefing about the GRUCOM system. So maybe our questions can be delayed until we get a full 360-degree view of the system.
Sure thing.
Yeah, there'll be coming an update on GRUCOM most likely in June or maybe July, because we got a lot of things piling up for the agendas. But yeah, that is coming soon to come.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we are nearing the end. So CIS and AMI, just as a high-level overview, FY21 actuals, just over 4 million. FY22 budget, 26.6, and 23 is 24.4. The 24 budget will also be right around 25 million as well to finish out those projects. I believe we're going to come back with a presentation on CIS and AMI, so I'll just move to the end of the presentation. So overall, the FY23 capital budget, excluding CIS and AMI, came in $4.5 million, up or 5.1%. So the primary increases are in the substation operations area, water engineering, wastewater lift station upgrades. The FY23 capital budget, including CIS and AMI, was 2.3 or 2% greater than the FY22 budget. With that, that includes my presentation. Thank you.
And I think if we've asked questions throughout, so if we want to go right into the flow of funds, if that's good with the board.
Okay, bear with me. There we go, got it.
So while Robin's pulling that up, we talked about the flow of funds earlier. So the description of our budget workshops are operations and maintenance and capital. Within the flow of funds, we're giving the totals as far as the O&M expenditures. And I think we've probably given a good overview, but I'm going to do a brief one again as we bring the presentation up.
I don't think I'm in Zoom, bear with me. Yeah, I'm just gonna make this work without anything going wrong. Let's see.
I can start with the overhead.
I'm gonna get it.
Okay. Thank you, Robin. All right. So FY23 budget process, GRU, final flow of funds. So essentially, this will be the last presentation other than the fuels one that you'll see with the City Commission next week. So we talked earlier about how important it is to maintain the utilities infrastructure, and we talked about the capital side of maintaining the infrastructure. This is the operations and maintenance. O&M is the acronym as far as this particular, the flow of funds and the operations and maintenance expenses. And as mentioned earlier, it's extremely important to the operational areas of the utility to make sure that the infrastructure is appropriately maintained. And so the level of dollars that are required are quite large. It's 150 million, but that is to maintain the infrastructure of a utility that's providing services, and we need those services to be provided safely and reliable, but also economically and environmentally sensitively, and that's a difficult balancing act. Next slide, please. So we described the flow of funds earlier. So the revenues received are actually paid out to pay out the O&M costs, budgeted deposits into the rate stabilization fund, transfers to the trustee to meet required debt service obligations, required deposits to the utility plant improvement fund, so UPIF, and then the balance remaining is any lawful purpose such as the general fund transfer. So the goal is to receive enough revenues to make all of those payments to be able to make that final payment to the general fund for city services. Next slide, please. So total revenues, 335 million is the budget for FY23. Operation and maintenance expenses across all of the systems, 150 million. Leaves net revenues of 184.9 million. Debt service is just under 100 million. Debt defeasance, which is a very positive piece, so we're starting to defease debt or reduce the debt that we need to issue, is 4.7. UPIF, Utility Plant Improvement Fund, is 46, and the GFT is 34. So essentially, this is the utilities budget for FY23. The subsequent pages have it by system. When you see the budget book close to September, it'll give you much more detail as far as payroll and those sorts of things. But this is essentially all of the work since last September is the slide. Yes.
So I know we've talked a lot, or there's been a lot of conversation about the general fund transfer, and I was just trying to remember as I was looking at this slide, the agreement that the utility has made with the city commission about the reduction in the GFT, how far out that agreement goes, and is that what we see reflected here?
It goes through 2027.
Okay.
So in FY21, it was 38,283, dropped to 36,283, and the $2 million amounts running through FY27. By FY27, we need to have a formula in place rather than just a blanket dollar amount, so a formula that makes sense for both general government and the utility. So we'll be working on that in the meantime.
Great. And then just also, I mean, a comment. I know that you've talked to us about this a lot, so it's not new information, but I think this slide, more than anything else that I've seen so far, really jumped out at me in terms of the sort of pickle that we're in. If you look at our debt service numbers as the portion of the overall revenues, and then look at where those numbers are going in the coming years as compared to what our net revenues are looking like. And so this one, I think, just really kind of jumped out at me in a way that no other presentation or conversation that we've had has. So
I can give you a little bit of a longer answer to kind of describe why you're seeing what you're seeing in FY25 and 26. So in FY19, the utility was facing, negative cash, and major projects, CIS, AMI, there were some reserve issues. The GFT was at 38 million. The base rates had been, let's say, suppressed for a number of years. So working with the city commission, we restructured the utilities debt. So long-term, still net present value savings, but that restructuring was necessary because all of those things that I just mentioned. In FY19, the biomass plant had been online for just over a year when we were looking at that. So the restructuring in and of itself was built to stabilize the financial health of the utility, knowing that there were going to be spikes coming in 25 and 26. So in 19, there were funds that moved into utility plant improvement fund. There were debt service savings that were starting to be set aside to help pay for CIS and AMI. So some of the positives of that restructuring were CIS and AMI are 100% cash funded. We're not issuing debt to put in those two projects, which is amazing. So that's the FY19, but in FY19 you have a concept called DIS savings, and that's what we're seeing in 25 and 26. So move forward into FY20, to remind the board, we completed a series of transactions. We call them the 2020 transactions, and what they were designed to do to really put aside debt service savings. So when you see the 4.6 million there, that's what is helping us to hopefully pull down those spikes that are coming in 25 and 26. And part of that whole plan and that program are to put in a debt reduction policy with the commission to really put some teeth into it going forward. So it's the debt defeasance dollars, the debt savings dollars from the 2020 transactions. The general government issued POB bonds, pension obligation bonds, so we had some savings there. But as the utility is going above its reserve targets, those dollars could also be used for either defeasing debt or not issuing more debt. So again, we're not looking at 1 year cycle, never looking at a 1 year cycle. I'm looking 10 years, 15, 20 years downstream. So those little things will start to build over time to start to bring down the utilities debt. So yeah, there's spikes there, but we're well aware and we're working on it.
Thank you.
That was a long answer.
If GFT is at 34 million, what percentage is that?
So overall, the utilities revenues are 335 million, so I don't know, 10%?
10%?
Yeah. Sorry, let me not say that so quickly. Quite a few people make reference to the percentage of the general fund transfer related to the utilities revenues. That's not the important piece. It's whether the utility can afford it. So, and that's a distinction that's really important. It's the last payment that's made from the utility. So if the utility isn't earning enough, they have to take that cash out of reserves, right? You have to take it from somewhere in order to make that general fund transfer payment. So just saying it's a percentage doesn't give you a true picture of that. And that's why we had the discussions last year with the commission, because what was happening is the utility for close to 3 decades was paying more out in the general fund transfer than what the utility was earning. And when that happens, it's either coming out of reserves or you are foregoing infrastructure needs. That's the core of it. You are foregoing infrastructure needs. And you can see pressures when that starts to happen. So the commission worked with the utility last year and started reducing the general fund transfer, which I can assure you it's a very serious process for general government, because they have services that they're trying to provide to the city's citizens as far as the general fund transfer coming back down. But those are the levers. So this is critical as we move forward. What that actually looks like. Getting to a formula is actually going to be critical. This is a good start, but getting to a formula is more critical, because then you can actually make sure that you're at least retaining maybe some profit within the utility rather than returning all of it. So this is a large discussion that's been going on for, I think, since 2018.
So, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, he had his hand
Oh,
up.
sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I haven't been around Gainesville very long, but I've heard there's been several restructuring of the debt.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any surprises after 27 that we're not aware of, or we're aware of, what do you call it, that are not indicated here? Higher debt service, or?
So I'd like to speak to the restructurings to make sure that the reasons why they were completed is clear. So in 2012, there was a restructuring that was completed right before the biomass plant was coming online. The payments for the available energy for the biomass plant at that particular time were in fuel. And so you have a fuel portion of the bill and a base rate portion of the bill. The fuel portion was going to go up, and so the debt restructuring was completed to bring the base rate portion down so that there wasn't a significant impact to customers overall. So 2012 had DIS savings that were occurring in 2019. And so I was coming on myself in 2018, 2019, facing DIS savings from the 2012. So we completed the 2019 restructuring to stabilize the utility. Back in 2019, the general manager had put together a long-term plan showing it through 2025, 2026, that there were a number of things that needed to happen. No one wants to do a restructuring. I don't want to ever do a restructuring again, but it was necessary because of negative cash balances, historical decisions, and those sorts of things. So where we are right now in FY22, the DIS savings is coming. We're planning for it. We've got money being set aside to handle that, but we're also putting in a debt reduction policy, which is not something the utility has had. So we are light years away from restructuring, but actually starting to plan to bring down the debt. Now, I'm going to have to mention this because of the net zero goal. So the net zero goal is a very expensive goal right now. So as we move through the IRP process, with energy supply, we'll update those numbers, and hopefully the technology will come in so that we don't have to issue a lot of debt in order to meet that goal. So to answer your question, we're planning for it very aggressively now to keep our debt service to such a level that can be covered by the base rate increases that have been currently approved by the City Commission. So we don't have to ask for any more base rate increases beyond what's been approved through 2027.
You mentioned fuel adjustment. That's taken care of on an ongoing basis, is it not? Since you change the fuel adjustment as you go along.
The fuel levelization fund is monitored on a monthly basis and adjusted accordingly. We've had obviously spikes in fuel costs lately, and the fuel levelization, the millage rate has been going up to cover it, and that's happening quite honestly across the globe right now.
That really shouldn't be an issue.
That's not part of this. That's a separate process. The fuel levelization fund is a pass-through.
Right, that's what I mean.
Right.
I think Teresa had something as well.
I did. So when you talk about the general fund transfer for the past 30 years, a lot of the maintenance that was needed, like the transformers, that was deferred over time? A plan, or is that part of how we are where we are, where the transformers need to be replaced now, that we deferred?
I'm not sure I would link the two because the general fund transfer comes out of essentially current year operating dollars, so it impacts O&M expenses. It impacts the ability of the utility to do extra things. So, for example, the billing system was delayed for several years. We weren't able to do it because of the O&M dollars. We see pressures in some of those systems because of the high GFT. You can't do X because you're paying the GFT. So I would say it's probably opportunity lost that way. So for transformers of $4 million and a portfolio of the debt portfolio of $1.8 billion, it's not, I wouldn't link the two is my point. But the GFT, I wasn't here in 2012, but I would have to imagine that it would have impacted, it would have been part of that decision to restructure the debt, because then you have debt service savings that's bringing down your debt service costs. So the overall point is, yes, the utilities struggled for the last 10 years, and even longer with the GFT, et cetera. But the commission has put in some floors. So they put in a cash balance reserve policy back in 2019 saying these are the reserve levels that are required to be at the utility. Multi-year base rate increases last year to stabilize. Multi-year general fund transfer reductions. These were historic decisions last year. This year we're bringing back a debt reduction policy and a credit metrics policy. Still historic decisions going forward. So the commission, from my perspective, is taking it extremely seriously going forward to make sure the utility has good financial footing. So with that, next slide.
Well, and I'm sorry, I had one more question. This also came from a citizen, and I think it relates to this slide here. And if this is too out of bounds, then let me know. But the Energy Authority, my understanding is that our obligation as part of the Energy Authority is to take part in this loan guarantee fund. And the citizen asked if that were to be called upon and we had to, actually really drop some real funds in that, how does that fit in? Like, where of the pie here would that be coming from, if that makes sense?
So if those guarantees were called, we would essentially have to pay the bill for TEA, and we would recover from the other members of TEA. So if TEA failed to pay vendor A can go to any one of the members, not just GRU, and say, hey, I want payment. And if they come to GRU and say, hey, I want payment, we pay that, and then we go to recover the portion from the other members, and we are only paying out our 1/17 of TEA.
Okay.
Yep.
It's not anything that we need to be overly concerned about. The citizen was concerned about it, so.
We had, I guess, several months of discussions with TEA when we were going through that exercise about increasing those guarantees and getting comfortable. There would have to be, a pretty catastrophic event for them not to pay their vendors, in my opinion. And this went through legal review from TEA and the city as well. So, that was one of the questions that were brought up during those discussions. So if we're called upon, how do we get our money back?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the answer, is the members would have to pay back whichever member was called on.
Okay, thank you.
In 25 words or less, can you just describe that process or that mechanism?
Which mechanism?
The TEA liability.
The process that I just explained, or?
Well, you were talking about 1/17 of the TEA obligation, right?
So TEA, it's the member authority, and this is probably not going to be 25 words or less.
Sorry if I've gotten us off track with this.
That's okay. So we're a member of the Energy Authority. They're essentially a trading organization, right? So they're buying and selling natural gas. They also provide other services for the utility, and the utility has been with TEA for quite a number of years. Oh my goodness, I think back in maybe the early 90s. So it's been a long-standing relationship. So TEA purchases natural gas for member A, but also for member B, and then also for client C and client D. And so they have a lot of churning in their portfolio, right? So they're purchasing gas and then paying it out, and then you have the dollars going back and forth. So essentially what they're doing is they have a backstop. It's essentially a backstop at the banks that's saying, okay, we'll help you through that process. And if you fail to pay, then actually pull on the guarantees for the members. TEA doesn't have a high cash balance, so they're not carrying a lot of cash. So they're using these lines in order to pay for gas and then receive cash back from whoever it is. To put it in perspective, as a member of TEA, the GRU has provided a cash balance to TEA to be part of that mechanism. And it ranges anywhere between 2.6 million a year. At the end of the year, it's only 2.6, or it's maybe up to 5.6 million. But that's the only amount that's sitting on their balance sheet. They're not holding large amounts of cash. And there's a good reason for that, because if they needed to hold large amounts of cash, then we have to provide that cash for them to hold. They don't do that. They just use lines. So it's sort of like simple terms, use your credit card and then pay it off, right? So use your credit card to buy X and then someone pays you back. That kind of exercise. Hopefully not 25 words or less, but I was trying to make it simple.
And Mr. Chair, just to add, I think that was perfect. The only thing to add is the 1/17th, we're 1/17th owner of TEA. So that's where the 1/17th comes in.
I went back to the electric system, flow of funds.
We haven't got there yet. It's the next
We haven't got there yet.
Okay.
So next slide, please, Robin. Okay. The electric system. All right.
Sorry.
So 217 in revenues, without fuels, O&M, net of fuels, operations and maintenance expense, debt service, debt defeasance, UPIF, general fund transfer, total use of net revenues, 125 million. Did you have any questions?
I had read somewhere that that the KW per customer, what do you call it, has actually been declining. And yet I see revenues are actually going up, so that implies a rate increase.
So the utility industry has been very flat as far as revenues. So I know revenues are like this, expenses are like this. So in order to maintain the infrastructure, so there are base rate increases that are pulling the revenues up in order to cover costs. So historically, inflation rates, et cetera, let's say 2%, 3%. This year it's a little bit elevated, but expenses are always going up. Revenues are flat. conservation, et cetera. So that's why the base rate increases have to be put in place in order to maintain the fixed cost at the utility. It's a utility. There are high fixed costs. You need people to do things. You need chemicals to do things. You know, there are high fixed costs to keep the utility running.
I understand the cost piece of it. I was kind of aiming at the loss of revenue.
So
The attrition, what do you call it? Is this due to solar or?
So in the electric system, you do have some attrition of customers. You have new customers moving into the territory. You have development, et cetera. But then you have conservation, energy efficient appliances, that are pulling that back down. It's a constant, push pull.
I mean, I think to go back to what you originally said, like in the late 2007, 8, 9, 10 period, from there was a sharp decline in use per customer.
Okay.
Across the whole industry, people use less, and a lot of it, like Claudia is mentioning, is passive replacement. Appliances are more efficient, light bulbs are more efficient.
LEDs,
Plus
right.
people are more conscious of green and thinking of wanting to use less energy, and so that impacted the whole industry, including GRU. We still are adding customers, but they're using less per. Our growth of customers is around 1% or so, but there has been a significant reduction in use per customer, and that's true in generate power as well as water and across the utility, and so that's been a challenge. Part of the financial challenge of where we are is because of that same thing. The growth is fairly flat. We are adding customers, but it's fairly flat because of that reduction in use per customer.
So what you're seeing in FY 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27 is a 3% base rate increase in the electric system. Okay. Next slide, please. So the water system, $36 million in revenues, O&M 17.5, net revenues 19.4. After paying out the flow of funds, total use of net revenues is $19.4 million. Next slide, please. Wastewater system, total revenues 47.7. O&M expense, operation and maintenance expense is 23. Net revenues 24.8. Total use of net revenues 24.8. The gas system, thank you, Robin. 17 million. Net revenues of 10 million. Total use of net revenues of 10 million. And then the GRUCOM system, the telecommunications system, total revenues of 16 million, O&M expense 11, net revenues of just under 5, total use of net revenues just under 5 million. Did I go? Oh, I think that's, sorry, I have 2 slides in here to say GRUCOM. Apologize, that's me. All right, next slide, please.
Well, actually, yeah, so I was curious about that because it looked like there were significant differences in the numbers between those 2 slides.
You're correct, I apologize. So the first one, sorry, Robin. Okay, so this shows the use of net revenues as if the telecommunication system was earning enough to cover its expenses. The next slide is showing the actual activity that's happening behind that. Sorry, Robin, go back to the prior slide. Thank you. When we put together the utilities budget, it's designed to net zero, so we wanted to make sure that we showed what you were going to essentially see in the budget book. Within the revenue line, there are projected interfund loans that are coming into the telecommunications system, and that's been happening for a couple of years now. The next slide is designed to be transparent and show what's really happening. So next slide, Robin. Thank you for your patience. So at the bottom, you see we have it's an interfund loan inside of the telecommunications system. That's for fiscal years 21 and 22, of 4.8 million. And the deficits moving forward will have to be funded by the other systems. We've talked about this a few times. We'll be coming back to talk more about the telecommunications system. But for full disclosure and transparency, those are cash dollars that will have to be put into that system if nothing else changes. So, next slide, please. So last year, and then again this year, the general manager directed that irrespective of post-pandemic inflationary factors, the O&M budgets would not need to exceed the 23 levels that were submitted last year. So this is very important. We were talking about the historical decisions from the commission for multi-year base rate increases and then a general fund transfer reduction of $2 million per year. Well, that was the commitment from the commission. The utility committed to maintaining essentially what we were expecting to spend going forward and not come in any more. Because if we came in more, then it would be a reserve reduction or a base rate increase. But fortunately, we actually came in a little bit lower than what we were reflecting last year, so that was really positive. So for the FY23 O&M budget, it's 2% less than the FY23 levels, so 150 versus 153 million. Robin, if you don't mind, if you could go all the way back to page 3 or page 4. Thank you. So this is essentially, there you go, the utilities budget. Thank you.
Any last questions before we close this out?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that if it were possible in our monthly report, if we could have some statistics on that KWH for customer, for residential customer, both historically and for that previous month or something, that would be really valuable. Really appreciate that.
So I believe at some point we're going to be having some conversations about what we're going to be doing with those reports and how to make them more useful, correct?
Yeah, the one thing is on the regular ongoing report, it's one thing to provide, we can provide that history, but is that something we need to see on a regular basis? Because it doesn't change very much like on a monthly basis type of thing. So it might be something that is more like an annual. But yeah, we're going to want the whole board to kind of weigh in on what are the things we want to see on a regular basis.
And that's valuable information for us.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, so just to finalize, in terms of next steps then, we will have on Monday evening, we will do the fuels portion of the budget, and then really we are essentially on the same path that the City Commission has set us on from last year with the multi-year rate adjustment and the reduction in GFT. And so that's the budget we brought back, is to stay on that same path and the same direction that the Commission set. And so the next step after Monday is really for the budget resolution approval by the City Commission in September, and any changes that are necessary to Appendix A of the ordinance. So this is really kind of the finish line of the budget. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. So that brings us to the member comment portion of the agenda. Any members have any comments other than what we've discussed related to the agenda tonight?
I have one comment. I liked it better when it was really cold.
Everybody was complaining when it was cold.
I would prefer really cold.
It's definitely hot.
It is very hot.
I think we complain too much. Whoever has the to teach us a lesson.
I feel sorry for the officers. They've got to be like cooking.
Any other member comments tonight? All right.
I'm not a member, but I will share with you, since we're approaching it rapidly, your July regular meeting date conflicts with a city commission meeting, special meeting, so I'm going to be reaching out to you all soon to try to find a new date for that meeting. So just wanted to make you aware that that'll be coming.
Thanks. So clearly we don't have any citizen comment. I wanted to say thanks to everybody for all the great presentations tonight. It was really insightful, so thank you for that. And I also wanted to just spend just a couple minutes here at the end. One thing on our agenda, it says that the budget workshop joint meeting with the City Commission is scheduled for 5/19.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's actually 5/16.
Okay.
From the get-go, I
Okay.
have had 19
Okay.
implanted in my brain.
All right. I just want to clarify because I actually got a sub that night for class. I was like, please. So anyway, so we'll be back on Monday. That'll be this coming Monday for the joint meeting with the City Commission, and that will be at GRU?
Yes.
That will be at
in the
GRU.
multipurpose room at 6 p.m.
And then our next scheduled regular meeting is June the 9th.
Yes.
And can we talk for just a moment about what the plan is for that meeting relating to sort of our work plan and what we will be seeing at that meeting?
Yes, so I'm going to do this off of memory, Robin. You might need to help me. So we were going to give a presentation on the IRP, which again is going to focus on what the process we previously went through, and briefly going to talk about the path forward because we're getting close to getting that started. So we're going to give an update on that. The other one was there were some questions about solar curtailment and the 2 megawatt cap per circuit. So we were going to give a presentation on that so that, and again, these presentations are so that we have some back and forth because I think there were some questions, but we're trying to answer what we best understand are the questions related to that. And
I don't know, were we planning to invite TEA back to talk about that, or do you think what we talked about tonight was sufficient?
oh yeah, we may also give an update on that guarantee with TEA.
To actually have their member, someone from
So they-
TEA come and explain.
And it's good because that gives us kind of an overview more of TEA, what they do, and kind of how they operate, as well as addresses the guarantee. So yeah, we'll have that as well. So those will be the three main topics. And then the GRUCOM update will be going to the City Commission in June, so most likely that might be something that we push to the July meeting, because that's a pretty full agenda, what we just described.
The three agenda points you mentioned just prior to that are for next Monday?
No. June the 9th.
For June the
Yeah,
9th.
so for Monday, this coming Monday, it's going to be the joint meeting with the city commission, and it's going to be the final portion of our budget workshop.
Yes.
Okay, and then we sort of squared away June 9th.
Yeah. June 9th will be those three items that Tony just mentioned.
Okay.
All right, anything else before we call it a night?
I'm exhausted.
All right, all right. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks again for all that good information tonight.
Thanks. Good to see you.